Smoke still rose from the runway. Then the F-15s broke radio silence, calling her name part. Lieutenant Sarah Chen pressed her face against the cold porthole of the alien transport ship, watching Earth grow larger in the viewport. After 3 years of captivity on Kepler 442b, she never thought she'd see home again. The blue marble looked exactly as she remembered, beautiful, fragile, and completely unaware of what was coming. The Zephyrian escort ship beside them gleamed silver in the starlight. Ambassador Vexhai had promised safe passage, but Sarah knew better than to trust their captors completely. The tall insectoid beings had kept her alive for a reason, and now she was about to find out why. "We approach your homeworld's defense perimeter." Vexhai clicked through the translator device. His forearms moved in what Sarah had learned was nervousness. "Your military will challenge us. You must convince them to stand down." Sarah turned from the window. The alien's compound eyes reflected the soft blue light of the ship's controls. Despite 3 years of daily interaction, she still found their appearance unsettling. "My government doesn't negotiate with kidnappers. We are not kidnappers anymore. We are diplomats." The translation device struggled with Vexhai's concept. "Your species has proven more resilient than our projections indicated. The invasion fleet suffered 60% casualties in the initial assault." The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. "Invasion? What invasion?" Vexhai's mandibles clicked rapidly. "You have been isolated from communications. The hegemony attacked your world 18 months ago. Your people, they fought with unexpected ferocity." Sarah's hands trembled as she gripped the back of a nearby chair. Her mind raced through the implications. While she'd been a prisoner studying alien technology and culture, Earth had been at war. Her friends, her family, her squadron, they'd all been fighting while she played unwilling ambassador. "The death toll?" she managed to ask. "Significant on both sides. Your primitive aircraft proved surprisingly effective against our fighters. Your pilots—" Vexhai paused, searching for words. "They showed no fear. Even when outgunned, they continued attacking. Many deliberately crashed into our larger vessels when their weapons failed." A surge of pride mixed with Sarah's horror. That sounded like the Air Force she knew. Her fellow pilots would never surrender, never retreat when their homes were threatened. "Your nuclear weapons were concerning," Vexhai continued. "The hegemony expected a quick subjugation. Instead, we found ourselves in a grinding conflict with massive losses. The Council has decided to attempt negotiations." "And I'm supposed to be your olive branch?" Sarah laughed bitterly. "You kidnapped me during a routine patrol, held me prisoner for 3 years, and now you want me to convince my people to trust you? You are the only human who understands our language and culture. You know we are not monsters, merely different." Sarah thought about her time on Kepler 442b. The Zephyrians weren't evil exactly. They viewed other species as resources to be managed, like humans might view cattle. The concept of individual rights or national sovereignty was alien to their collective consciousness. They genuinely couldn't understand why humans had fought so hard instead of simply accepting integration into their empire. A harsh tone echoed through the ship's communication system. Vexhai's head snapped toward the control panel, his antennae twitching frantically. "What is it?" Sarah demanded. "Your defense forces are more active than expected." Vexhai manipulated several controls with his multiple arms. "Multiple contacts approaching our position. Large numbers." Sarah pushed past him to look at the sensor display. Even with her limited understanding of Zephyrian technology, she could see dozens of contacts converging on their position. Her heart swelled with fierce pride. Earth wasn't going down without a fight. "Signal them," she ordered. "Tell them who I am." "They are not responding to our communications. I believe they intend to destroy us regardless of our diplomatic status." The first missiles streaked past their viewport, brilliant flashes in the darkness. Sarah watched in amazement as human fighters swarmed around the much larger Zephyrian ships. The aliens had superior technology, but the human pilots flew with a reckless aggression that clearly caught them off guard. An explosion bloomed silently in the vacuum as one of the escort ships took a direct hit. The Zephyrian vessel tumbled away, trailing atmosphere and debris. Sarah counted at least 20 human fighters pressing the attack, their formation tight and disciplined despite the chaos. "They're going to kill us all," Vexhai chittered in alarm. "Not if I can help it." Sarah pushed toward the communication console. "Put me on an open channel. All frequencies. You would save us? Sarah met his compound gaze steadily. I'm about to save everyone if I can. This war needs to end before both sides destroy each other. Her fingers found the communication controls she'd watched Vexhai use countless times. 3 years of forced observation had taught her more than her captors realized. She adjusted the frequency to standard military channels and opened the transmission. This is Lieutenant Sarah Chen, call sign Phoenix, serial number 2847, Golf 974. I am aboard the lead Zephyrian vessel. I repeat, this is Phoenix and I am alive. Static filled the channel for several seconds. Then a familiar voice crackled through the speakers. Older, wearier than she remembered, but unmistakably her former squadron leader. Phoenix, this is Wildcat. Authenticate with your mother's maiden name and the score of your last poker game. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. Colonel Martinez was still alive, still flying, still being careful. Wildcat, mother's name is Rodriguez. I lost $12 to you in 5-card stud and you cheated. A pause. Then Phoenix, you beautiful, impossible ghost. We thought you were dead. What's your status? Alive and reasonably well, Wildcat. I'm with a Zephyrian diplomatic mission. They want to negotiate. The channel exploded with chatter as other pilots recognized her voice. Sarah heard call signs she remembered and many she didn't. New pilots who joined the war while she was gone. The mix of joy and determination in their voices made her chest tight with emotion. All units maintain attack positions but hold fire, Martinez ordered. Phoenix, are you under duress? Sarah looked at Vexhai, who watched her with obvious anxiety. 3 years ago, she would have said yes without hesitation. Now things were more complicated. Negative, Wildcat. I'm here voluntarily, but we need to talk, all of us. This war is killing both species and there might be another way. The silence that followed seemed to stretch forever. Smoke still rose from the runway. Then the F-15s broke radio silence, calling her name part. The Edwards Air Force Base runway still smoldered from the morning's attack when Sarah's feet touched Earth soil for the first time in 3 years. Smoke drifted across the tarmac from burning fuel trucks, and several hangars showed fresh blast damage. But the base was operational, and that was what mattered. Colonel Martinez hadn't changed much except for the gray in his hair and the new scars on his hands. He stood surrounded by a full security detail, watching as Sarah emerged from the Zephyrian shuttle. His expression mixed relief, suspicion, and something that might have been pride. Welcome home, Phoenix, he said simply. Sarah fought the urge to run to him. 3 years of military discipline held her in place as she saluted properly. Thank you, sir. Permission to report? Granted. But first, Martinez stepped forward and pulled her into a brief, fierce hug. Damn glad you're alive, Lieutenant. We missed you. Behind him, Sarah recognized several faces from her old squadron. Captain Rodriguez looked older and carried himself like a man who'd seen too much combat. Lieutenant Jackson bore a long scar across his cheek but grinned at her with the same cocky smile she remembered. The new faces were younger, harder, marked by a war she'd missed entirely. The Zephyrians? Martinez asked, nodding toward the shuttle where Vexhai waited with obvious nervousness. Ambassador Vexhai and a small diplomatic team. They're genuinely trying to negotiate, Colonel. The war isn't going the way they expected. Martinez's laugh held no humor. That's an understatement. Come on, let's get you debriefed. The Joint Chiefs are screaming for every detail you can provide. As they walked toward the command center, Sarah absorbed the changes around her. The base hummed with wartime activity she'd never seen before. Anti-aircraft batteries dotted the landscape, their barrels trained skyward. Hardened aircraft shelters housed fighters that showed clear battle damage, hastily repaired and pressed back into service. How bad has it been? She asked. Bad enough. They hit us hard in the first wave. Major cities, military installations, infrastructure. We lost a lot of good people. Martinez's jaw tightened, but they underestimated us. Badly. They passed a memorial wall that hadn't existed when Sarah left. Hundreds of names were etched into black granite. Pilots and ground crew who died defending Earth. She recognized too many of them. The Zephyrians say they've taken 60% casualties, Sarah said quietly. Sounds about right. Maybe conservative. Martinez opened the door to the briefing room. We've been bleeding them white. Every time they try to establish a permanent foothold, we hit them. Hard and fast. The briefing room held a dozen officers Sarah didn't recognize. Their faces showed the strain of prolonged combat operations. General Harrison presided from the head of the table, his uniform crisp despite the early hour and recent action. "Lieutenant Chen," Harrison said without preamble, "give me one good reason why we shouldn't arrest you for collaboration." The accusation hit like a slap. Sarah straightened to attention. "With respect, sir, because I've spent 3 years learning everything I could about the enemy. Their technology, their tactics, their psychology. Information that could end this war. Or information that makes you a security risk." Harrison's eyes were cold. "You've been living with the enemy for 3 years. How do we know you haven't been turned?" Sarah felt anger rise in her chest. She'd dreamed of coming home, not of being treated like a traitor. "Because if I had been, sir, those fighters would be wreckage right now instead of escorting the Zephyrian shuttle safely to ground." Martinez stepped forward. "General, I've known Lieutenant Chen for 5 years. She's one of the most loyal officers I've ever served with. Loyalty can be compromised, Colonel, especially under extended psychological pressure." Harrison gestured to a chair. "Sit down, Lieutenant. Tell us everything. And I mean everything." For the next 4 hours, Sarah recounted her capture, imprisonment, and gradual integration into Zephyrian society. She described their technology, their military organization, their complete inability to understand human concepts of individual rights and national sovereignty. "They see us as particularly aggressive livestock," she explained. "They can't comprehend why we won't simply accept integration into their empire. To them, resistance is literally incomprehensible." "Which explains why they've been so brutal," General Harrison observed. "They're trying to force compliance through overwhelming violence." "Yes, sir. But it's not working. Every human victory reinforces their belief that we're dangerously unstable. They're starting to consider more extreme measures." The room fell silent. Sarah had deliberately saved the worst for last. "What kind of measures?" Martinez asked quietly. "Complete sterilization of the planet. They have the capability to render Earth uninhabitable from orbit. The only thing stopping them is the potential loss of resources they hope to exploit." General Harrison leaned back in his chair. "And now they want to negotiate because they're afraid of the cost?" "Partly. But also because some of them are starting to respect us. They've never encountered a species that fights like humans do. Our willingness to die rather than surrender has impressed them." A young major Sarah didn't recognize spoke up. "What about their military capabilities? Numbers, weapons, ship classes?" Sarah spent another hour detailing everything she'd observed about Zephyrian military forces. Their ships were individually superior to anything humans possessed, but they relied heavily on centralized command structures. Disrupt their coordination, and entire fleets became far less effective. "They're also not used to opponents who adapt quickly," she added. "Their previous conquests all followed predictable patterns. We keep surprising them." When the formal debriefing ended, Martinez walked her to temporary quarters in the VIP section. The room was Spartan but clean, with a window overlooking the still-smoking runway. "It's been hell, Sarah," he said quietly once they were alone. "The first 6 months, we weren't sure humanity would survive. They hit us with everything they had. But we held. And then we started hitting back." Martinez's smile was grim. "Remember Lieutenant Peterson from the 94th? Kid was always too aggressive for his own good?" Sarah nodded. Peterson had been barely out of flight school, all enthusiasm and reckless courage. He took out a Zephyrian command ship by ramming it with his F-22, killed himself and 1,700 aliens in one shot. The whole alien fleet went into chaos for 3 hours while they tried to re-establish command authority. The pride in Martinez's voice was evident, but Sarah could hear the pain underneath. Too many good pilots had died in desperate actions like that. "That's when they started calling us the Death Seekers," Martinez continued. "They couldn't understand why anyone would choose death over surrender. It scared them." Sarah looked out at the runway where ground crews worked to clear debris from the morning's attack. Human resilience was on full display. Damaged but unbroken, already preparing for the next fight. "The Zephyrians want to end this war, Colonel, but they need to save face with their own people. They can't just admit they were wrong to attack us." "What are you suggesting?" "A joint solution. Something that benefits both species without either side surrendering." Sarah turned from the window. "I think I know how to make it work. But it's going to require trust on both sides." Martinez studied her face carefully. "You've changed, Sarah. 3 years with them has marked you. I know their weaknesses now, and their strengths, but more importantly I understand what they fear most, which is Sarah's smile was sharp as a blade. That humanity is exactly what we appear to be. The most dangerous species they've ever encountered. Smoke still rose from the runway. Then the F-15s broke radio silence, calling her name part. The Edwards Air Force Base runway still smoldered from the morning's attack when Sarah's feet touched Earth soil for the first time in 3 years. Smoke drifted across the tarmac from burning fuel trucks, and several hangars showed fresh blast damage. But the base was operational, and that was what mattered. Colonel Martinez hadn't changed much except for the gray in his hair and the new scars on his hands. He stood surrounded by a full security detail, watching as Sarah emerged from the Zephyrian shuttle. His expression mixed relief, suspicion, and something that might have been pride. "Welcome home, Phoenix," he said simply. Sarah fought the urge to run to him. 3 years of military discipline held her in place as she saluted properly. "Thank you, sir. Permission to report?" "Granted. But first..." Martinez stepped forward and pulled her into a brief, fierce hug. "Damn glad you're alive, Lieutenant. We missed you." Behind him, Sarah recognized several faces from her old squadron. Captain Rodriguez looked older and carried himself like a man who'd seen too much combat. Lieutenant Jackson bore a long scar across his cheek but grinned at her with the same cocky smile she remembered. The new faces were younger, harder, marked by a war she'd missed entirely. "The Zephyrians?" Martinez asked, nodding toward the shuttle where Vexhai waited with obvious nervousness. "Ambassador Vexhai and a small diplomatic team. They're genuinely trying to negotiate, Colonel. The war isn't going the way they expected." Martinez's laugh held no humor. "That's an understatement. Come on, let's get you debriefed. The Joint Chiefs are screaming for every detail you can provide." As they walked toward the command center, Sarah absorbed the changes around her. The base hummed with wartime activity she'd never seen before. Anti-aircraft batteries dotted the landscape, their barrels trained skyward. Hardened aircraft shelters housed fighters that showed clear battle damage, hastily repaired and pressed back into service. "How bad has it been?" she asked. "Bad enough. They hit us hard in the first wave. Major cities, military installations, infrastructure. We lost a lot of good people." Martinez's jaw tightened. "But they underestimated us. Badly." They passed a memorial wall that hadn't existed when Sarah left. Hundreds of names were etched into black granite. Pilots and ground crew who died defending Earth. She recognized too many of them. "The Zephyrians say they've taken 60% casualties," Sarah said quietly. "Sounds about right. Maybe conservative." Martinez opened the door to the briefing room. "We've been bleeding them white. Every time they try to establish a permanent foothold, we hit them. Hard and fast." The briefing room held a dozen officers Sarah didn't recognize. Their faces showed the strain of prolonged combat operations. General Harrison presided from the head of the table, his uniform crisp despite the early hour and recent action. "Lieutenant Chen," Harrison said without preamble, "give me one good reason why we shouldn't arrest you for collaboration." The accusation hit like a slap. Sarah straightened to attention. "With respect, sir, because I've spent 3 years learning everything I could about the enemy. Their technology, their tactics, their psychology. Information that could end this war. Or information that makes you a security risk." Harrison's eyes were cold. "You've been living with the enemy for 3 years. How do we know you haven't been turned?" Sarah felt anger rise in her chest. She'd dreamed of coming home, not of being treated like a traitor. "Because if I had been, sir, those fighters would be wreckage right now instead of escorting the Zephyrian shuttle safely to ground." Martinez stepped forward. "General, I've known Lieutenant Chen for 5 years. She's one of the most loyal officers I've ever served with. Loyalty can be compromised, Colonel, especially under extended psychological pressure." Harrison gestured to a chair. "Sit down, Lieutenant. Tell us everything. And I mean everything." For the next 4 hours, Sarah recounted her capture, imprisonment, and gradual integration into Zephyrian society. She described their technology, their military organization, their complete inability to understand human concepts of individual rights and national sovereignty. "They see us as particularly aggressive livestock," she explained. "They can't comprehend why we won't simply accept integration into their empire. To them, resistance is literally incomprehensible." "Which explains why they've been so brutal," General Harrison observed. "They're trying to force compliance through overwhelming violence." "Yes, sir. But it's not working. Every human victory reinforces their belief that we're dangerously unstable. They're starting to consider more extreme measures. The room fell silent. Sarah had deliberately saved the worst for last. What kind of measures? Martinez asked quietly. Complete sterilization of the planet. They have the capability to render Earth uninhabitable from orbit. The only thing stopping them is the potential loss of resources they hope to exploit. General Harrison leaned back in his chair. And now they want to negotiate because they're afraid of the cost? Partly. But also because some of them are starting to respect us. They've never encountered a species that fights like humans do. Our willingness to die rather than surrender has impressed them. A young major Sarah didn't recognize spoke up. What about their military capabilities? Numbers, weapons, ship classes? Sarah spent another hour detailing everything she'd observed about Zephyrian military forces. Their ships were individually superior to anything humans possessed, but they relied heavily on centralized command structures, disrupt their coordination, and entire fleets became far less effective. They're also not used to opponents who adapt quickly, she added. Their previous conquests all followed predictable patterns. We keep surprising them. When the formal debriefing ended, Martinez walked her to temporary quarters in the VIP section. The room was Spartan but clean, with a window overlooking the still-smoking runway. It's been hell, Sarah, he said quietly once they were alone. The first 6 months, we weren't sure humanity would survive. They hit us with everything they had. But we held. And then we started hitting back. Martinez's smile was grim. Remember Lieutenant Peterson from the 94th? Kid was always too aggressive for his own good? Sarah nodded. Peterson had been barely out of flight school, all enthusiasm and reckless courage. He took out a Zephyrian command ship by ramming it with his F-15, killed himself and 1,700 aliens in one shot. The whole alien fleet went into chaos for 3 hours while they tried to re-establish command authority. The pride in Martinez's voice was evident, but Sarah could hear the pain underneath. Too many good pilots had died in desperate actions like that. That's when they started calling us the Death Seekers, Martinez continued. They couldn't understand why anyone would choose death over surrender. It scared them. Sarah looked out at the runway where ground crews worked to clear debris from the morning's attack. Human resilience was on full display. Damaged but unbroken, already preparing for the next fight. The Zephyrians want to end this war, Colonel, but they need to save face with their own people. They can't just admit they were wrong to attack us. What are you suggesting? A joint solution. Something that benefits both species without either side surrendering. Sarah turned from the window. I think I know how to make it work. But it's going to require trust on both sides. Martinez studied her face carefully. You've changed, Sarah. 3 years with them has marked you. I know their weaknesses now, and their strengths. But more importantly, I understand what they fear most, which is, Sarah's smile was sharp as a blade, that humanity is exactly what we appear to be. The most dangerous species they've ever encountered. Smoke still rose from the runway. Then the F-15s broke radio silence, calling her name part. The Corvin battle fleet emerged from hyperspace like a plague of metal locusts, their ships bristling with weapons that could crack planets. Sarah watched the sensor displays in the Joint Command Center with grim satisfaction. She'd been expecting this for weeks. 800 ships, reported Commander Torres, one of the new human liaison officers assigned to the Allied fleet. Full battle configuration. They're not here to negotiate. War Prime Kethmore studied the enemy formation with professional interest. 3 months of working alongside humans had changed him, though he'd never admit it. His tactics had grown more aggressive, incorporating human concepts of acceptable losses and calculated risks. The Corvin Empire moves faster than our projections indicated, he admitted. They seek to claim Zephyrian territory while our forces are still recovering from the Earth campaign. Sarah manipulated the tactical display, highlighting the enemy approach vectors. They're assuming you're still weakened from fighting us. They don't know about the alliance. The past 3 months had been a whirlwind of joint operations and cultural exchange. Human pilots now flew alongside Zephyrian fighters, their aircraft retrofitted with alien technology. Zephyrian ground forces had adopted human tactics of small unit independence and aggressive initiative. The combination was proving devastatingly effective. Admiral Hassan's task force is in position near Jupiter, Sarah continued, tracking human fleet movements. The Yamato and her escorts can strike their flank when they commit to their attack run. Admiral Hassan had been skeptical of the alliance at first, like most human military leaders. But when Zephyrian technology upgraded his ship's weapons and defenses by several generations, skepticism gave way to pragmatic cooperation. The marriage of human tactics and alien technology was creating something neither species could achieve alone. Corvin strategy follows predictable patterns, War Prime Kethmore observed. They will attempt to destroy our primary fleet units first, then move against planetary targets. They expect minimal resistance from damaged forces. Then let's give them what they expect, Sarah suggested. At first. The plan that emerged over the next hour was pure human deviousness wrapped in Zephyrian technological superiority. The Allied fleet would appear to retreat in disorder, drawing the Corvin forces into an aggressive pursuit. Hidden human squadrons would then strike at critical moments, while Zephyrian heavy units emerged from concealment to trap the enemy between hammer and anvil. Your species has a gift for deception, Ambassador Vexai observed as he watched the deployment orders go out. This level of tactical misdirection is impressive. We've had lots of practice, Sarah replied. Humans have been lying to each other in warfare for millennia. At least now we're lying to aliens instead. The first phase went exactly as planned. The visible Allied fleet began a fighting withdrawal from the outer system, their formations appearing ragged and disorganized. Corvin commanders took the bait, accelerating their advance to prevent the damaged forces from escaping. Sarah watched from the command ship's bridge as enemy contacts surged forward in pursuit. The Corvin vessels were elegant in their own way, crystalline structures that caught and reflected starlight like deadly prisms. Their technology was different from both human and Zephyrian designs, based on exotic energy manipulation rather than conventional physics. They're moving into the trap zone, reported Lieutenant Commander Park, monitoring sensor contacts. Human stealth fighters are in position on their flank. The stealth fighters were Sarah's particular pride. Human pilots flying Zephyrian-enhanced aircraft, invisible to conventional sensors and armed with weapons that could punch through Corvin shields. They represented everything the Alliance could achieve: human courage and adaptability combined with alien technology and resources. Execute Phase 2, War Prime Kethmore ordered. Space erupted in silent violence as the trap closed. Human fighters materialized from sensor shadows, their weapons tearing into Corvin escorts before the enemy could react. Simultaneously, hidden Zephyrian heavy cruisers emerged from behind asteroid concealment, their massive guns targeting the enemy capital ships. Sarah watched the tactical display with fierce satisfaction as Corvin formations dissolved into chaos. They'd expected to fight a weakened Zephyrian fleet and instead found themselves facing something they'd never encountered: a truly integrated, alien-human military force enemy. Flagship is changing course, Torres reported. They're trying to break contact. Like hell they are, Sarah muttered, opening a communication channel. Admiral Hassan, this is Phoenix. The big fish is trying to swim away. Hassan's reply crackled with static and weapons fire. Roger that, Phoenix. Yamato is moving to intercept. Tell our spiky friends to keep the pressure on. The next 20 minutes were a masterclass in combined arms warfare. Human fighters harassed Corvin formations with hit-and-run attacks, while Zephyrian heavy units provided sustained firepower. The enemy found themselves unable to concentrate their forces effectively, constantly reacting to threats from unexpected directions. When the Corvin flagship's shields finally collapsed under concentrated fire, the psychological effect on their fleet was immediate. Alien discipline broke down as ship commanders began independently attempting to retreat. What had started as an organized withdrawal became a rout. Pursuit? War Prime Kethmore asked as enemy survivors fled toward the edge of the system. Sarah considered the strategic situation. Let them go. Better to have defeated survivors spreading word about the Alliance than to waste resources on cleanup. The aftermath was telling. Corvin losses exceeded 70% of their invasion force, while Allied casualties remained minimal. More importantly, the engagement had demonstrated something unprecedented in galactic history: two species working together as genuine equals. Your tactical innovations continue to surprise, Vexai admitted as they reviewed battle reports. The hegemony has never achieved this level of integration with client species. That's because you've never treated another species as partners before, Sarah pointed out. You've always approached relationships from a position of dominance. War Prime Kethmore's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. Perhaps. But this alliance benefits both our peoples. Human courage enhances Zephyrian technology. Our resources amplify your tactical flexibility. Sarah nodded, watching as human and Zephyrian crews worked together to repair battle damage. 3 months ago, such cooperation would have been unthinkable. Now it seemed natural, almost inevitable. There's something else, she said quietly. Intelligence reports suggest the Stellar Collective is reconsidering their own expansion plans. Word of this victory is spreading through their territory. Fear, Kethmore asked. Respect, Sarah corrected. They're starting to realize that this alliance isn't just a temporary convenience. We're becoming something new, something that changes the balance of power in this part of the galaxy. The thought was both thrilling and terrifying. Humanity had gone from an unknown species to a major galactic player in less than 2 years. The transformation was unprecedented, but Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that it was also irreversible. The Council of Species will demand an explanation, Vex High warned. Many civilizations will see this alliance as a threat to established order. Sarah's smile was sharp as steel. Good, let them worry. Maybe if they're busy watching us, they'll be too distracted to threaten each other. The political implications were staggering, but that was a problem for diplomats and politicians. Sarah was a pilot and her concerns were more immediate. The alliance worked in combat, but could it survive peace? Could two such different species maintain cooperation without the unifying threat of external enemies? Time would tell. But for now, humanity and the Zephyrian hegemony stood together among the stars, partners in something that neither could have achieved alone. Smoke still rose from the runway. Then the F-15s broke radio silence. Calling her name part. The Council of Species convened on the neutral world of Nexus Prime, an artificial habitat built specifically for interstellar diplomacy. Sarah stood in the observation gallery, watching representatives from dozens of alien civilizations file into the massive assembly chamber below. Each species brought their own environmental requirements, creating a bizarre patchwork of atmospheric zones, lighting conditions, and gravity fields. Nervous? Colonel Martinez asked, joining her at the transperisteel barrier. Terrified, Sarah admitted. Fighting alien invaders was simple compared to this. At least in combat, you know who the enemy is. Below them, the human Zephyrian alliance sat in a specially designed section that accommodated both species' needs. Ambassador Vexhai represented the hegemony's interests, while General Harrison spoke for Earth's unified government. The sight of natural enemies sitting side by side had caused considerable stir among the other delegations. The Andorian Collective is calling for economic sanctions, Martinez observed, nodding toward a cluster of translucent jellyfish-like beings. They claim our alliance disrupts established trade relationships, Sarah snorted. Translation: they're afraid we'll cut into their weapons sales to both sides. The Stellar Collective's delegation occupied a massive environmental dome filled with methane atmosphere. Their representatives looked like living crystals, beautiful and completely alien. Sarah had studied their culture during the long journey to Nexus Prime. They were traders and information brokers, neutral parties who profited from everyone else's conflicts. They're the ones to watch, she told Martinez. The collective has influence with every major power. If they oppose the alliance, we could find ourselves facing a galaxy-wide coalition. The session began with formal presentations from each major power. The Corvan Empire, still smarting from their defeat at the hands of the alliance, painted humanity and the Zephyrians as dangerous aggressors threatening galactic stability. Their crystal-bodied representatives projected holographic images of the recent battle, emphasizing the unprecedented cooperation between former enemies. The alliance represents a fundamental shift in the balance of power, declared the Corvan speaker. No previous partnership has achieved such integration of military capabilities. The implications for galactic security are profound. Sarah had to admit they weren't wrong. The alliance had demonstrated something new in galactic politics, the ability of two different species to work together as true equals rather than in hierarchical relationships. When humanity's turn came, General Harrison approached the central podium with characteristic military bearing. His presentation was straightforward and uncompromising. 3 years ago, the Zephyrian hegemony invaded Earth without provocation or warning. Human casualties exceeded 50 million in the first wave of attacks. By every definition, we were victims of unprovoked aggression. The chamber fell silent as Harrison displayed casualty reports and footage from the early days of the invasion. Sarah watched alien delegates react with varying degrees of shock and disturbance to images of human cities burning. We could have responded with hatred and revenge. Instead, we chose understanding and cooperation. The alliance exists not because we forgave our attackers, but because we recognized mutual benefits in partnership. Vexhai took the podium next, his forearms manipulating holographic controls with practiced ease. The hegemony has learned much from our association with humanity. Their tactical innovations have revolutionized our military doctrine. Their technological adaptability has enhanced our research capabilities. Most importantly, their social structures have demonstrated new possibilities for interspecies cooperation. The presentation continued for hours, with each side of the alliance presenting evidence of successful collaboration, joint military operations, shared technological development, cultural exchange programs that had already produced remarkable results. But Sarah could read the mood in the chamber. Fear outweighed admiration among most delegations. The alliance represented change, and established powers rarely welcomed change. The Stellar Collective's spokesman finally stood, his crystalline form refracting light in hypnotic patterns. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of centuries of diplomatic experience. The Council recognizes the achievements of the Human-Zephyrian Alliance. However, we must address the broader implications for galactic stability. No previous partnership has demonstrated such rapid military and technological integration. The potential for disruption to existing relationships is significant. Here it comes, Sarah thought. The formal opposition she'd been expecting. The collective proposes a series of restrictions on military cooperation between allied species. Technological sharing should be regulated through established channels. Joint operations should require approval from neutral parties. General Harrison's response was immediate and sharp. The Stellar Collective proposes to regulate sovereign nations' right to form mutual defense agreements. This is unacceptable to both Earth and the hegemony. Sovereignty is not absolute when it affects galactic security. The collective representative replied smoothly. Unrestricted military alliances threaten the balance that has maintained peace for 3 centuries. Sarah felt anger rising in her chest. They were talking about humanity, and the Zephyrians like unruly children who needed adult supervision. The condescension was intolerable. Before she could think better of it, she activated the gallery's communication system and addressed the chamber directly. With respect to the distinguished delegates, you're all missing the point. The effect was electric. Hundreds of alien eyes turned toward the observation gallery as Sarah continued speaking, ignoring the frantic signals from her superiors. You're debating how to regulate an alliance that's already proven its value. While you've been talking, the Corvin Empire was planning to annex 3 Zephyrian worlds. Our joint task force stopped them. The hegemony's enemies were preparing to exploit their perceived weakness. Our cooperation eliminated that threat. She could see General Harrison's face turning red, but Sarah pressed on. This was too important for diplomatic niceties. You want to maintain the status quo because change is scary. But the status quo was constant warfare, economic exploitation, and the strong preying on the weak. The alliance offers something different. Cooperation based on mutual respect rather than dominance. Ambassador Vexhai rose from his position and clicked rapid approval. Lieutenant Chen speaks truth. The alliance has demonstrated new possibilities for interspecies relations. We do not seek to threaten existing powers, but we will not be constrained by their fears. The chamber erupted in heated discussion as delegates reacted to Sarah's unexpected intervention. Some species seemed intrigued by her words, while others appeared scandalized by the breach of protocol. The Andorian Collective's speaker pulsed with agitated colors. A mere military officer presumes to address the Council of Species? This demonstrates the Alliance's disregard for established order. This demonstrates that we value substance over ceremony, General Harrison replied, rising to support Sarah, despite his obvious displeasure with her initiative. Lieutenant Chen has spent more time working directly with the Zephyrians than any other human. Her insights are relevant to this discussion. The debate that followed raged for hours. Some delegations supported the alliance as a positive development in galactic relations. Others demanded restrictions or outright dissolution of the partnership. The Stellar Collective remained neutral, clearly calculating which position would best serve their interests. As the session broke for recess, Sarah found herself surrounded by alien reporters and diplomatic staff. Questions came in dozens of languages, most of which her translator struggled to handle. What guarantees can you provide that the Alliance won't threaten neutral worlds? How does humanity plan to handle its rapid technological advancement? Is it true that human pilots are now flying Zephyrian warships? Sarah answered as best she could, but her attention was focused on the larger patterns emerging from the discussions. The galaxy was dividing into factions, those who saw the Alliance as an opportunity, those who viewed it as a threat, and those who remained undecided. The outcome of these deliberations would determine whether humanity and the Zephyrians could continue their partnership openly, or whether they'd be forced to operate in the shadows of galactic disapproval. Either way, Sarah realized there was no going back. The Alliance had changed both species irrevocably, and the galaxy would have to adapt to that new reality. Smoke still rose from the runway. Then the F-15s broke radio silence, calling her name part. The attack came without warning. 3 months after the Council of Species had grudgingly recognized the human Zephyrian alliance, Sarah was inspecting the new joint training facility on Kepler 442b when the first explosions lit up the horizon. Multiple contacts. "Incoming fast," reported Commander Chen. "No relation," despite the shared surname, from the orbital monitoring station. At least 50 ships, unknown configuration. Sarah sprinted toward the command center, her mind already shifting into combat mode. Beside her, War Prime Kethmore moved with predatory grace, his enhanced senses picking up details that human perception missed. "Not Corvin," he observed, studying the sensor readings as they reached the operations center. Ship signatures are unfamiliar. Energy patterns suggest hybrid technology. The implications hit Sarah like a physical blow. Coalition forces. They've built ships specifically to counter our Alliance tactics. The past 3 months had been tense but productive. The Alliance had established joint research facilities, integrated training programs, and shared defense networks throughout both human and Zephyrian space. But opposition to the partnership had been growing among certain galactic powers. "Stellar collective transponder codes," reported Lieutenant Martinez from the communications station. "They're broadcasting surrender demands on all frequencies." Sarah accessed the enemy formation data, her enhanced tactical training, a result of Zephyrian neural augmentation, allowing her to process information at superhuman speed. The attacking fleet was a nightmare combination of technologies from a dozen different species, all optimized to exploit weaknesses in human and Zephyrian military doctrine. "They've been planning this for months," she realized. "Look at the ship configurations. Corvin stealth systems, Andorian energy weapons, collective coordination networks. They built this fleet specifically to destroy us." War Prime Kethmore's mandibles clicked rapid agreement. "The Coalition fears what we represent. They seek to eliminate the Alliance before other species consider similar partnerships." The first wave of attackers swept over the orbital defenses with devastating efficiency. Human-designed weapon platforms found their targeting systems confused by Corvin stealth technology. Zephyrian heavy cruisers discovered their shields ineffective against Andorian energy beams, calibrated specifically to their defensive frequencies. But the Alliance had learned from every battle, and Sarah had prepared for exactly this scenario. "Execute Protocol 7, she ordered, activating communications with the hidden reserve fleet. Across the system, seemingly empty space suddenly swarmed with activity. Human stealth fighters and Zephyrian assault ships emerged from sensor shadows, their locations known only to the Alliance command structure. The reserve fleet had been positioned using human deception tactics and Zephyrian technology, invisible to conventional sensors and undetectable even to Coalition intelligence networks. "Surprise, you bastards," Sarah muttered as the trap closed around the attacking fleet. The battle that followed demonstrated how far the Alliance had evolved beyond its component parts. Human pilots flew Zephyrian fighters with alien technology enhanced by human innovation. Zephyrian commanders employed human tactical doctrines modified by their own strategic thinking. The result was something unprecedented in galactic warfare, a truly integrated military force that fought as a single organism. Coalition forces are adapting faster than projected, Kethmore observed as enemy formations shifted to counter the Alliance counterattack. Their coordination systems are more advanced than intelligence indicated. Sarah watched the tactical display with growing concern. The Coalition fleet was learning and adapting in real time, their ships sharing data and modifying tactics moment by moment. It was exactly the kind of flexibility that made human forces so dangerous but applied with alien computational power. They copied our integration model, she realized. Different species working together, sharing strengths and covering weaknesses. The thought was both flattering and terrifying. The Alliance had inspired other powers to attempt their own cooperative ventures. But where humanity and the Zephyrians had built their partnership on mutual respect and necessity, the Coalition was held together by shared fear and opportunism. Their weak point is trust, Sarah decided. They're cooperating out of convenience, not conviction. We can exploit that. She opened a channel to Admiral Hassan, whose task force was engaging Coalition heavy units near the outer planets. Admiral, this is Phoenix. I need you to fake a retreat from Grid 7. Phoenix, we're holding our own here. No need to withdraw. Trust me, Admiral. Make it look like you're breaking under pressure. Sell it hard. The next 20 minutes tested everyone's nerves as human forces appeared to collapse under Coalition pressure. Ships broke formation and fled in apparent panic, leaving gaps in the Alliance defense grid. Coalition commanders took the bait, redirecting forces to exploit the perceived weakness. That's when the real trap revealed itself. The retreating human ships had drawn Coalition forces into a killing zone, prepared by hidden Zephyrian units. Massive asteroid fortresses suddenly came online, their concealed weapons systems emerging to envelop the enemy fleet in a crossfire that no shields could withstand. But the Coalition's trump card was still to come. As their main fleet died in the asteroid field, their reserve forces revealed themselves. Ships Sarah had never seen before, their configuration completely alien to known galactic technology. What are those? Lieutenant Martinez asked, staring at the sensor readings in confusion. Sarah felt ice form in her stomach as she recognized the energy signatures. Extragalactic technology. They made contact with powers from outside our galaxy. The new ships moved with impossible speed and grace, their weapons cutting through Alliance formations like tissue paper. Human and Zephyrian vessels simply ceased to exist where the alien beams touched them. Matter converted to energy in ways that violated known physics. We can't fight that, Kethmore stated with warrior pragmatism. Our technology is insufficient against extragalactic weapon systems. Sarah's mind raced through options, all of them bad. The Alliance fleet was being systematically destroyed by weapons that seemed to ignore conventional defenses. In minutes, the Coalition would control Kepler 442b and everything humanity and the Zephyrians had built together. Then inspiration struck, not from military training or tactical analysis, but from 3 years of cultural exchange with an alien species that thought differently about everything. We can't fight them with technology, she agreed, but we don't have to. She opened a channel to every ship in the Alliance fleet, human and Zephyrian alike. All units, this is Phoenix. Implement emergency protocol designation, Remember Earth. I repeat, Remember Earth. The protocol was something they'd developed but never tested. A last resort tactic that embodied everything the Alliance had learned about working together. Human pilots would physically transfer to Zephyrian ships, linking their neural implants directly to alien computer systems. Zephyrian commanders would share their enhanced processing power with human tactical intuition. The fusion was dangerous and potentially fatal. Human brains weren't designed to interface directly with Zephyrian technology, while alien minds could be overwhelmed by human emotional intensity. But it was their only chance against an enemy that outclassed them technologically. Sarah was the first to make the connection, linking her consciousness directly to War Prime Kethmore's command systems. The sensation was indescribable, alien thoughts and human emotions merging into something entirely new. For a moment, she experienced the universe through compound eyes that could see across the electromagnetic spectrum, while Kethmore felt human intuition and creativity flooding his enhanced mind. Together, they were more than the sum of their parts. Sarah's tactical instincts guided by Zephyrian computational power, Kethmore's strategic thinking enhanced by human adaptability and aggression. As the fusion spread throughout the fleet, the Alliance became something unprecedented, a hybrid intelligence that thought and fought in ways no single species could achieve. The extragalactic ships found themselves facing an enemy that anticipated their moves and adapted faster than their weapons could track. Alliance vessels began moving in impossible formations, their pilots and commanders thinking as one organism while maintaining individual initiative. When the coalition fleet finally broke and fled, their extragalactic allies followed, apparently unwilling to face an enemy that had become something entirely outside their experience. In the aftermath, as human and Zephyrian crews slowly separated from their neural links, Sarah realized they had crossed another threshold. The alliance was no longer just cooperation between species, it was evolution toward something new. Smoke still rose from the runway, then the F-15s broke radio. Silence. Calling her name part. 75 years after the first Zephyrian ships had darkened Earth's skies, Sarah stood on the observation deck of New Harmony Station, watching the construction of humanity's first starship, designed from the ground up with alien technology. The vessel was beautiful in a way that no purely human or Zephyrian craft could achieve. Flowing lines that suggested both species aesthetic sensibilities working in perfect harmony. The council is calling it an abomination, Colonel Martinez observed, joining her at the massive viewport. He wore the insignia of the Alliance Defense Force now, a joint organization that had grown beyond anything either species had originally envisioned. The council calls everything we do an abomination, Sarah replied. Last month they condemned our joint research into faster-than-light communication. Next week they'll probably object to our cultural exchange programs. 5 years had transformed both species in ways no one could have predicted. Human cities now incorporated Zephyrian architectural principles, creating buildings that seemed to grow organically from the landscape. Zephyrian hives had adopted human concepts of individual privacy and personal space, fundamentally altering their social structures. The neural linking technology that had saved them during the coalition attack had evolved into something remarkable. Humans could now interface directly with Zephyrian computational systems, while aliens could experience human emotional depth and creative intuition. The barriers between the species were dissolving, creating something genuinely new. Dr. Vexhai's latest report. Martinez handed her a data tablet. The preliminary results from the hybrid colony on Kepler 186f. Sarah scanned the information with growing amazement. The joint settlement established 2 years ago had exceeded all projections for cooperation and productivity. Humans and Zephyrians weren't just living together. They were building a society that incorporated the best aspects of both cultures. Agricultural yields up 40% over either species' individual efforts, she read aloud. Technological innovation rates increased by 60%. Birth rates, she paused, staring at the numbers. Are they sure about this? Confirmed by 3 independent surveys. Human birth rates on the colony are up 30% over Earth average. Zephyrian reproduction cycles have accelerated by 20%. The children born there are showing enhanced capabilities we don't fully understand yet. The implications were staggering. Evolution was accelerating under the pressure of interspecies cooperation. The next generation of humans and Zephyrians would be fundamentally different from their parents, adapted for a universe where cooperation between species was the norm rather than the exception. General Harrison wants to see us, Martinez continued. Priority meeting in the command center. Sarah found Harrison studying holographic displays showing galactic political alignments. The past 5 years had seen dramatic shifts as other species struggled to adapt to the new reality the Alliance represented. The Corvin Empire has formally requested membership in the Alliance, Harrison announced without preamble. Full military and technological cooperation in exchange for integrated defense agreements. The news shouldn't have been surprising, but Sarah still felt shock at the magnitude of the change. 5 years ago, the Corvins had been sworn enemies trying to exploit Zephyrian weakness. Now they were asking to join the partnership they'd once tried to destroy. The Stellar Collective is splitting apart, Harrison continued. Half their member species want to establish formal relations with us. The other half is pushing for stronger ties with the extragalactic powers that help the coalition. Sarah studied the political map with growing unease. The galaxy was polarizing around 2 fundamental approaches to interspecies relations: cooperation and integration versus hierarchy and dominance. The Alliance had become the focal point for every species' hopes and fears about the future. What about the Andorian Collective? She asked. Radio silence for the past 6 months. Their territory is sealed to all outside contact. Intelligence suggests they're undergoing some kind of internal transformation. War Prime Kethmore entered the command center, his presence immediately commanding attention, despite his smaller size compared to other Zephyrian warrior castes. 5 years of working with humans had changed him as much as any member of either species. The Hegemony Council has reached a decision regarding expansion of the Alliance, he announced. We will accept new members, but only under strict conditions. Any species joining the partnership must demonstrate genuine commitment to integration, not merely strategic convenience. Sarah nodded approval. The Alliance's strength came from the deep cooperation between humans and Zephyrians, not from loose confederations of convenience. New members would have to prove they could achieve the same level of integration. There's something else, Harrison said quietly. Long-range sensors have detected massive fleet movements in extragalactic space. The powers that aided the coalition aren't finished with us. The threat had been growing for years, somewhere beyond the galactic rim. Civilizations with technology beyond current understanding were watching the Alliance with growing alarm. The neural fusion protocols that had saved them once might not be enough against truly advanced extragalactic forces. Estimated timeline? Sarah asked. 18 months, maybe 2 years before they arrive in force. Intelligence suggests they're building something specifically designed to counter our integration capabilities. Sarah felt the familiar pre-combat tension building in her chest. After 5 years of relative peace, war was coming again. But this time it wouldn't be between species within the galaxy. It would be a battle for the very survival of their way of life. We need to accelerate the integration protocols, she decided. Every species that wants to join the Alliance needs to be brought up to full cooperation standards as quickly as possible. That's risky, Kethmore warned. Forced integration could create instabilities in the neural linking systems. We could lose everything we've built. We'll lose everything anyway if we face the extragalactic powers alone, Sarah countered. The Alliance works because it makes us stronger together than we could ever be apart. We need to extend that principle to the entire galaxy. The plan that emerged over the following weeks was ambitious beyond anything either species had attempted. Crash programs for neural integration technology, accelerated cultural exchange initiatives, and joint military exercises involving dozens of species. The Alliance would either unite the galaxy or fracture under the pressure of too rapid expansion. But as Sarah watched the construction crews working on New Harmony Station, human and Zephyrian engineers collaborating so seamlessly that it was impossible to tell where one species' contribution ended and the other's began, she felt hope rather than fear. 5 years ago, she'd been a prisoner watching her captors struggle to understand human nature. Now she was part of something unprecedented in galactic history, a true partnership between species that had transcended its origins to become something entirely new. The neural link interface she wore allowed her to feel Kethmore's thoughts as he stood beside her, watching the same construction work. His alien mind processed the visual data differently, but the emotional content was identical. Pride in what they'd accomplished, determination to protect it, and hope for what the future might bring. The children born on the hybrid colonies call themselves Terrans, she said quietly. Not human or Zephyrian, but something new. They're already talking about the galaxy as one community rather than competing empires. Evolution, Kethmore agreed through their neural link. Your species taught us that cooperation is stronger than dominance. Perhaps we can teach the galaxy the same lesson. Through the station's viewport, Sarah could see ships from a dozen different species docking at the Alliance facilities. Some were new arrivals seeking membership. Others were established partners bringing resources and personnel. The sight would have been impossible to imagine 5 years ago, but now it seemed natural, inevitable. The extragalactic threat would come, and it would test everything they'd built. But Sarah was confident in one thing. Whatever emerged from that conflict, it would be something the universe had never seen before. The Alliance had proven that different species could become stronger together, and that principle was spreading throughout the galaxy. Humanity had started as prisoners of war and evolved into partners in the greatest experiment in cooperation the galaxy had ever known. Whatever came next, they would face it together, as equals among the stars. The smoke had long since cleared from those first burning runways, but the message it represented, that humanity would never surrender, never stop fighting for what mattered, had spread throughout the galaxy. And now that same spirit of defiance and determination was shared by dozens of species working together toward a future none of them could achieve alone.